Hey guys, it's Owen Hillman with Tackles and Checks. I'm officially back. I graduated Florida State this past semester, so I'm going back to making videos. I'll probably post about once every 3 weeks. You might see a surprise post here and there, but I'm working on another AJ Brown video, and it should come out in the near future. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk about Black Monday. For those of you guys that don't know, Black Monday is a tradition in NFL where after the regular season ends, a lot of head coaches get fired. It's a pretty grim day in the NFL. And sometimes you see coaches get fired after the wild card too, like Mike Tomlin stepping down with the Steelers right after their wild card loss to the Texans just this past week. But I wanted to talk about it in the sense of college football because a lot of head coaches got fired this past year. In fact, 14 of them in total got fired. That is an astronomical amount. So today I wanted to talk about why each of those coaches got fired, what their resume is, where they're at now, and what the new head coaches are doing because the transfer portal is about to close and early signing period was about a month ago. So I wanted to talk about all that. I will be starting from the ACC and ending with the SEC, and I will be going in alphabetical order by team. So the first person I'll talk about is Justin Wilcox at Cal. Without further ado, let's get into it. Justin Wilcox was the head coach for Cal for 9 years, and he never had any more than an 8-5 record, but he was still a solid head coach for Cal. He lasted about as long as Jeff Tedford, and his defenses always had an identity, which is why when you look at the NFL talent, he always had defensive backs coming out of that school. I didn't mention everybody, but most of his drafted talent were linebackers and corners. He was also decent in the transfer portal. He had a couple good guys this year, such as Jaron Kiwi-Sagapulutele, who was a transfer from Oregon, Hezekiah Massis, who was a transfer from FIU, and Jacob DeJesus, who was a transfer from UNLV. In recruiting, he was never more than the 32nd best recruiting class, and he was always around the 40s. In 2017, he was 72nd, but after 2021, you see that there's a major plateau, and that is because Cal moved from Pac-12 to the ACC. There's not really any sort of grab when it comes to playing in the ACC because you're on the Pacific Coast if you're Cal, so you can't really attract a lot of players in the ACC. The biggest reasons for his firing, though, were two things. One, the 2025 transfer portal. He got royally screwed in that transfer portal with his quarterback, both of his starting running backs, his starting tight end, his best wide receiver, and one of his best defensive linemen entering the transfer portal. And now Fernando Mendoza is leading Indiana to a championship, so that does not look good on him. Also, they ended up losing the big game to Stanford this year. If you lose to Stanford, it's a big no-no for Cal. That's one big rivalry that Cal has every single year. And Stanford was, I want to say they were 3-7 entering that game too, so they were not a very good team. But Cal ended up losing them anyway, and as a result, Justin Wilcox got fired. The new hire for Cal is going to be Tosh Lupoy, who was the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach for Oregon. All things considered, the Tosh Lupoy era started off pretty strongly. He had the 46th ranked recruiting class, but he also had the 13th ranked transfer portal class, getting guys like Ian Strong from Rutgers and Chase Hendricks from Ohio. That's going to really help Jaron Kiwi-Sagapulutele develop in Cal. And I think Cal could be a sneaky contender for the ACC next year. I don't know if they're going to win the whole thing, but watch out for them. Next, we get to head coach Brent Pry, and Brent Pry is the perfect example of the Peter principle. Whereas if somebody gets promoted to a higher position, they're more than likely to fail at that position. And Brent Pry was great as a defensive coordinator for Penn State. From 2016 to 2024, he led elite defenses with Micah Parsons, Odafe Owe, and Jaquan Brisker. But overall, he's not a very good head coach. He went 7-6 as his best record in 2023, and overall he went just a measly 16-24 and 10-13 in the ACC, including the disastrous 2025. His recruiting classes were not amazing either. He only ranked 35th best in 2022, and he never got better from there. The transfer portal was alright for him. He got Bashal Newton, who ended up being very good at Virginia Tech, and now is looking to find his footing with Jacksonville. Antoine Powell-Ryland Jr. was a transfer from Florida, and he's Pebbles, the transfer from Duke, and Jalen Lane was a transfer from Middle Tennessee, to name a few. But the biggest reasons that he was fired was that he was incompetent at winning one-score games. That is a key component for head coaches. You've got to be able to win those winnable games. And he was 1-12, including being 0-5 in 2024. He lost 34-27 against Vanderbilt, 26-23 against Rutgers, 38-34 against number 7 Miami, which that was a controversial one. 38-31 against Syracuse, and 31-28 against Duke. He also couldn't develop Kyron Drones. This was supposed to be his biggest transfer portal addition. This was the shining piece for Brent Pry. But outside of 2022, where he had 7.3 yards per attempt and a 137.3 passer rating, he was never really that good. In fact, it got worse the rest of his career at Virginia Tech, and the transfer for Baylor did not end up working out. The new head coach for Virginia Tech is going to be none other than James Franklin, who we're going to talk about later, but he was the Penn State head coach who got fired last year. But Virginia Tech upgraded mightily with this, and now Brent Pry gets to go back to his old position as the defensive coordinator for Virginia Tech. So good on him. So far, it appears that James Franklin has gotten the last laugh from Penn State, as Virginia Tech is rolling with the transfer portal. He is the 11th ranked class in the transfer portal, and he has the 24th ranked class recruiting-wise, too. He stole almost every single Penn State recruit for Virginia Tech, showing how important it is to land the head coach. And he's had a strong start at Virginia Tech. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if Virginia Tech makes around the ACC next year. Obviously, James Franklin has his issues with big games, but at the ACC, you don't have a lot of big games in your schedule. And Brent Pry being the defensive coordinator there does help a lot. Up next, we have Mike Gundy, and this ends one of the longest coaching tenures in NCAA history. He made it 20 years of the program, from 2005 to 2025, but unfortunately he hit a roadblock in 2024, where he went 3-9, and in 2025, Oklahoma State was one of the worst teams in the league, and he got fired right after losing to Tulsa, which ended one of the most legendary coaching careers. I'm serious, this guy should have a statue outside of Oklahoma State. He led the team to a 170-90 record in his tenure, which is the best record of any coach at Oklahoma State. He also won the Bear Bryant Award in 2011 for winning the Big 12 in 2011 as well. From 2005 to 2021, Mike Gundy was a very good recruiter. He was ranked around 19th to 30th in terms of recruiting classes around that time span. And that's very good for the Big 12 because this was pre-NIL. This was when everything was done under the table. But class composite-wise, from 2022 to 2025, doesn't really hold up for him. He was the 35th ranked class in 2022, and it got worse from there. In 2024, he went down to the 63rd ranked recruiting class. So he kind of lost his chops. Before then, though, he had several NFL talents, such as Russell Okung, James Washington, Justin Gilbert, Tyreek Hill, and who can forget about Dez Bryant? All that's in gold is all of the All-Americans that he's had. I didn't include all of them, unfortunately, because I can only fit so much in one slide, but very, very big NFL resume with him. Unfortunately, he had a rough stretch to end his tenure. He went 3-9 in 2024, and the team itself went 1-11 in 2025, showing that the foundation was completely gone by the time he left. And you're going to see that with the new recruiting profile. He had 14 straight Big 12 losses, and his points per game went down from 27.2 in 2024, which is ranked 74th in the nation, to 14.2 in 2025. That is third to last in the entire FBS. His recruiting classes also fell off. Before 2021, he was never lower than the 35th ranked recruiting class, and his highest was 19th. But after 2022, he was never ranked higher than the 35th ranked recruiting class. The new head coach for Oklahoma State is Eric Morris, father of quarterback Chandler Morris from Virginia, and he inherits a pretty rough situation with Oklahoma State. He had the 78th ranked recruiting class, but he brings in the 6th ranked transfer portal class, including his quarterback Drew Mestemaker and his running back Caleb Hawkins. We'll see how both of them translate to Power 4 play, but it's a big transfer portal haul for Oklahoma State. It could be one of the winners of the transfer portal. Michigan Wolverines head coach Sherrone Moore got fired in a surprise move at the time, but as the allegations came further and further against him, it was not a surprise at that point. So I'm not going to include his recruiting classes, his resume, or his NFL talent because we all know that's not why he got fired. Sherrone Moore, I figured he was going to be fired in 2026 anyway because Bryce Underwood was stalling in that Michigan system. But now the new head coach for Michigan is former Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham. He got signed to a 6-year deal, and he inherits a pretty good situation. Michigan was ranked the 11th recruiting class in the nation, and they had the 18th ranked transfer portal class in the nation, although they did lose Justice Haynes to Georgia Tech. Still, it's a big win that Bryce Underwood did not transfer out from Michigan because he is the quarterback of the future, and they get the running back of the future in Savion Hyder. Michigan State head coach Jonathan Smith also makes this list. He was fired by Michigan State near the end of the 2025 season. and he proved that not every single head coach can do better in a better situation. He left Oregon State to join Michigan State after Oregon State announced that they were staying with the Pac-12, so that would no longer be a Power 4 conference, and he moves to a Power 4 conference job. But it doesn't work out for him, as he went just 5-7 in his first year and 4-8 in 2025. Overall, though, he was very good with Oregon State. In 2022, he led the Beavers to a 10-2 record, and he coached good offensive talents such as Jake Luton, Taliese Fuaga, Isaiah Hodgins, and Luke Musgrave. But overall, his recruiting classes were just okay. In 2024, he was ranked 31st, including having the 12th best transfer portal class, which I'll get into that. But in 2025, he ranked just 42nd and had the 28th best transfer portal class. Overall, though, he was fired because his offensive philosophy just didn't gel. In the Big Ten, you need a little bit more of a running game, and in 2024 and 2025, Jonathan Smith never really got that. He had just 19.3 points per game in 2024, which was ranked 123rd, and in 2025, he was ranked just 90th with 24.6. And that ties into the fact that he couldn't develop Aiden Childs. Aiden Childs was his prized possession from Oregon State, transferring from there to Michigan State to help lead the Michigan State Spartans to relevance again after the Mel Tucker years. But unfortunately, Aiden Childs didn't develop. He had just 13 touchdowns to 11 interceptions in 2024, and in 2025 he had 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions before suffering an injury near the end of the season. The new head coach for Michigan State is Pat Fitzgerald. He was the former Northwestern head coach all the way from the mid-2010s to 2022, and this is a high-risk, high-reward hire. Pat Fitzgerald obviously wasn't around for the transfer portal. In fact, he hadn't coached since Nick Saban retired, and it's showing right now at Michigan State. They ranked just 49th in the transfer portal, and they had the 46th ranked recruiting class coming into this. So far, kind of a lukewarm start for Pat Fitzgerald. We'll see if this ends up working out. It's a big high-risk, high-reward maneuver. Up next is head coach James Franklin. He was a really good coach with Penn State. He led the Penn State Nittany Lions out of the Joe Paterno era, and overall, he went 104-45 with them, including 64-36 in the Big Ten. But as I'll get into later, his biggest issues were in big games. He was 6-6 in bowl games, and he had some god-tier squads that never even won a bowl game, which is kind of crazy. But James Franklin was so good that his coaching tree is full of now head coaches for teams. He had Ricky Ranney, Manny Diaz, Brent Pry, Joe Moorhead, Gerard Parker, and Charlie Huff. And they're now head coaches in FBS teams. All of them, except for Brent Pry, who's now his defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech. But we'll get into that. His recruiting classes were always very strong too. He never ranked lower than 24th from 2014, and he had the 8th ranked recruiting class in 2022 and the 6th ranked recruiting class in 2018. So a very strong recruiter, and as a result, he had a lot of NFL talent. Guys like Micah Parsons, Saquon Barkley, Olu Fashanu, and Chris Godwin highlight this list. And Tyler Warren was pretty good too. Abdul Carter's going to be a stud. Overall, just a very good foundation for James Franklin. He was also very well known for his walk-on culture as well, and that's where the Chad Powers documentary came from. So James Franklin, very good head coach, but just disappeared in big games. That was the biggest reason why he got fired. He went 4-21 against top 10 opponents and 16-36 overall against ranked opponents. 2025 was also a big letdown. In the preseason, Penn State was ranked the 2nd team in the nation. But then they lose to Oregon, and everyone was like, okay, it's Oregon. That was the Big Ten championship rematch, and Oregon is still a very good team. But then they had losing to UCLA with interim head coach Tim Skipper, and then Drew Aller goes down after a loss to Northwestern, and that's when they decide to cut bait. Overall, the Nittany Lions went just 7-6 in 2025, after looking like they'd be the Big Ten champions for the first time in a while. The new head coach is Matt Campbell. He was the former Iowa State head coach, and it took a long time for Penn State to make this hire, and as a result, it cost them in the recruiting field. They had just the 85th ranked recruiting class in the nation because most of those players flipped to Virginia Tech or to other schools. But Matt Campbell made up for it by getting most of his Iowa State guys, including quarterback Rocco Beck, and as a result, Penn State had the 4th ranked transfer portal class and the 51st ranked class overall. So I guess it could be worse, but not a great start to the Matt Campbell tenure, although it's not even his fault. Up next, we have UCLA head coach Deshaun Foster, and this felt like a screwed hire from the beginning. After the Chip Kelly era turned into a disaster, UCLA just decided to promote their running backs coach to head coach, and it ended in disaster. He had a 5-7 record in 2024, including a 3-6 record in the Big Ten, and in 2025, he went just 0-3, so he had just a 5-10 record throughout his tenure there. previous experience was as Texas Tech and UCLA's running back coach. He was the UCLA running back coach from 2017 to 2023, and he developed Zach Charbonnet, Joshua Kelly, and Demetric Felton as NFL talent. Recruiting classes, though, was kind of mid. He was the 44th ranked recruiting class in 2024, and in 2025 he had the 36th ranked recruiting class, including 20th in the transfer portal, which we'll get into a big addition in a little bit. But the biggest reason for firing was that the team invested in Nico Yamaliva, and he needed a bombing hard. After a 145.3 passer rating with the Tennessee Volunteers, Nico Yamaliva entered the transfer portal, and it was considered a very controversial move for him. And UCLA decided to go with it, and he had a 123.5 passer rating, and he had just a rough stretch at the beginning of his career, including the loss to New Mexico 35-10. I think that was the biggest nail in the coffin for Deshaun Foster. UCLA had 13 penalties in the day, and Nico had just 217 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. The new head coach is Bob Chesney from James Madison. He led them all the way to the college football playoff, winning the Sun Belt with a 12-1 record. And they actually put up a good fight against Oregon, which is why I think he's going to do pretty well at UCLA in a couple of years. At UCLA, he's had a pretty interesting tenure there so far. He hasn't done as well in the transfer portal as you might expect. He didn't get Alonzo Barrett. UCF ended up winning that one, but he has the 26th ranked transfer portal class, and he had the 64th ranked recruiting class. So overall, he has just the 60th overall class in his first year of his tenure. So could have done better in 2026, but I think he'll be just fine at UCLA. We'll see though if the Bruins have any sort of relevance in them next year. We now move on to the SEC, where expectations get a lot higher, and as a result, coaching tenures are a lot shorter. Although Sam Pittman did pretty well for himself, he was with the Arkansas Razorbacks for 7 years, leading them to a 9-4 record in 2021, but overall he met a bitter end in 2025 when he had a blowout loss to Notre Dame. He went 32-34 Arkansas, but couldn't win the SEC, going just 14-29. His previous experience was all as an offensive line coach, had 25 years of experience under that, including ending his offensive line coach tenure with Georgia from 2016 to 2019. So as you can see, he had a lot of elite offensive linemen come out of his schools. Jonathan Cooper, a former top 10 pick. Juwan James was a first-round pick. Frank Ragnow was an All-Pro in Detroit. Andrew Thomas was a first-round pick and an All-Pro. Isaiah Wynn was a first-rounder, and Isaiah Wilson was a first-rounder. So overall, very good offensive line coach. That didn't really translate over to Arkansas, though, as you see no offensive lineman from Arkansas outside of Frank Ragnow during his early tenure with them. He had Landon Jackson, Isaac Teaslaw, Traylon Burks, and Raheem Sanders with Arkansas. But overall, his recruiting classes were just okay. Again, they weren't very good in terms of the SEC, but they were very good around the nation, as he ranked around the 25th to the 30th best recruiting class around that time. But that didn't translate well to the SEC, as he ranked from just 9th to even 15th from 2024 to 2025 in the SEC. The biggest reasons for his firings, though, was that his offensive line was never elite at Arkansas. In 2020 to 2025, he never had higher than 99th ranked sack percentage in the league, and he had as low as the 131st ranked sack percentage in 2023. Yeah, it's with Taylon Green as quarterback, and he's a lot more mobile, but you got to have a better offensive line if you've been an offensive line coach for 25 years. He also couldn't hold on to one-score leads. He had a 7-19 record in one-score games, and in 2025, he was just 2-10 despite an 11-point differential. The new head coach for Arkansas is, ironically enough, one of the teams that beat Sam Pittman's head coach. I'm talking about Ryan Silverfield, the head coach of Memphis. And this was a questionable hire because Memphis has always been a good American team, and Ryan Silverfield didn't really do much to push the needle. In fact, he never made it to the American Championship. And overall, it's showing at Arkansas. He has just the 24th ranked transfer portal class and the 48th overall recruiting class. So he has the 39th overall class. But maybe Ryan Silverfield can make something of himself. Next up, we get Auburn head coach Hugh Freeze. And Hugh Freeze is an example of a second chance opportunity not really panning out. A lot of people thought he deserved the second chance after what he led Liberty to. But at Auburn, it just never ended up working out. He had a 6-7 record in 2023, and he never got better from there. And the team went 4-5 under his watch in 2025 before they decided to let him go. Auburn is a tough football program to coach. We saw that Brian Harsin flamed out, and after the Gus Malzahn years, Auburn has completely fallen off and has been nowhere near the SEC championship since 2017. Overall, though, Hugh Freeze went 15-19 and 6-16 in the SEC, so he clearly was not able to coach against the best of them in the SEC. The previous experience he had was with Ole Miss from 2014 to 2017, where he left in disgrace after the recruiting violations and another off-the-field incident that I will not mention. But with Liberty, he kind of got back to form. He went 34-15 with the Liberty Flames, and he led them to the highest AP ranking in history. They were number 17 in 2020, so the Liberty Flames were very good under his watch. And as a result, they had 2 draft-eligible players in Malik Willis and Demario Douglas that ended up becoming in the NFL. But most of his talent comes from Ole Miss. Larry Tunsil, A.J. Brown, Daquan Treadwell, Evan Ingram, Dawson Knox. We kind of already know how he got them anyway, but interesting to see just that talent on Ole Miss, and they're never really making it past the second best team in the SEC. Overall, Hugh Freeze is a very strong recruiter, and that's never been questioned. At Auburn, he had very strong classes. It was the 19th ranked class in 2023, and then had 2 straight top 10 finishes in 2024 and 2025. When you look at it to the SEC, though, he was around the top tier of teams, but never at 1 through 4 spot. He was never at the top team in the SEC. He was very close. The biggest reason for firing, though, was his terrible offense. His offenses were always around 70th to 80th in points per game, while his defense was quietly one of the best in the nation. In 2025, it was 32nd in points per game, but his offense was 79th in points per game as well. He also did not develop his 5 stars very well. When you look at this list, Cam Coleman, Amaris Williams, and Deuce Knight, 3 of those players have already transferred, and it's fair to say that Malik Autry and Garrett Smith will probably transfer as well. But just a brutal break for Auburn, not being able to develop the talent that Hugh Freeze has. That's a big indictment on him as a head coach. The new hire for Auburn is Alex Golesh. He's the USF head coach, and he inherits a bit of a rough spot for Auburn. They've gone down to about the 20s in terms of overall class rank. They were the 30th in terms of composite rank, and the transfer portal hasn't done very kindly for them either. They did win out of Byron Brown, so they have their starting quarterback, but they overall ranked 16th in the transfer portal. Next up is Billy Napier. Sunbelt Billy gets promoted to the Florida Gators, and again, it's another big opportunity and another very pressure-filled job, but overall, Napier did not end up living up to the task. In 2024, he showed promise, went 8-5 with that squad, and they were expected to improve dramatically with some great freshmen such as Dallas Wilson. But 2025 was just a major disappointment all around. He went 3-4, got fired after a win against Kentucky, and overall went just 22-23, including 12-16 in the SEC. His previous experience was as the Louisiana Raging Cajuns head coach, and this is where he earned the nickname Sunbelt Billy. He won the 2021 Sunbelt League title and was the 2019 and 2021 SBL Coach of the Year, coaching Elijah Mitchell, Kevin Dotson, Osiris Torrance, and Trey Amos. Overall, his record was 40-12 there, very strong. His NFL talent at Florida showed that he didn't really get to keep these guys for very long. Kamir Adike and Ricky Pearsall are both transfers into the program, and Anthony Richardson left the program in just his sophomore year after only 1 full season as a starter for Florida. But overall, he was very strong in the recruiting field. He was always around the top 20, and he was just middle of the pack in the SEC, but when you're trying to revitalize the program, that's a very big plus for you. The reasons for his firing, though, were because of early departures. I'd argue that losing Anthony Richardson was a big deal and why he was fired. Trevor Etienne was also not great in terms of losing him. Prince Umamelin went to Ole Miss, and Shamar James got drafted as a junior to the NFL. There was also the stagnation of DJ Lagway. Lagway in 2024 showed a lot of promise with 1,915 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. But in 2025, he led the SEC in interceptions, including throwing 5 in a game against LSU. And then Billy Napier also lost to a Group of 5 opponent. You got to be the nickname Sunbelt Billy because of your ability to win against Group of 5 competition. And then you go out and get upset against the South Florida Bulls. It doesn't matter. That was a big indictment on his resume. Now the new hire is John Sumrall from Tulane, and there is some unwarranted concern about Sumrall not panning out because Billy Napier was a Group of 5 coach and he didn't pan out. But I think that this is a great head coach hire from Florida. And it's already showing because he's getting some guys to come back that were originally going to enter the transfer portal for Florida, such as Jaden Ball and Eugene Wilson, and even Dallas Wilson got back from Florida. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get DJ Lagway back, but hiring Buster Faulkner as the Georgia Tech offensive coordinator and bringing in Aaron Philo could be very promising for Florida. I could see them being a sneaky team in the SEC next year. Up next is Mark Stoops, and similar to Mike Gundy, Mark Stoops was with the Kentucky Wildcats for a long time. Brought the franchise back to relevance after a couple of lean years in the early 2000s, and overall was a solid head coach. Obviously, his resume looks a little worse because the SEC is cutthroat, but he went 82-80 with Kentucky, and that's the most amount of wins in Kentucky's history. He also led them to the first AP rank since 1984, getting the number 18 rank in 2021, the number 12 rank in 2018. And as a result of that 2018 season, he won the SEC Coach of the Year. So a very good tenure from Mark Stoops, but again, he kind of just ran out of gas in 2024 and 2025, which is when the transfer portal really took off. And looking at his NFL talent, he has some great squads. In 2018, he had Josh Hines Allen, and Kelvin Joseph. Lynn Bowden Jr. was an All-American. And then he revitalized the core in 2023 with guys like Will Levis, Dayon Walker, Maxwell Hairston, even Wan'Dale Robinson too. Kentucky was a very good team in 2023. And it shows in his recruitments. Unfortunately, he only had about one or two good recruiting classes. 2021, he had the 14th best class in the nation and just the 5th in the SEC. But outside of that, Kentucky was on the outside looking in for most of these recruiting classes. So you can argue that he did more with less in 2018, with them being around the 30th to the 38th ranked recruiting class. But the biggest reason that he was fired is because he just could not win against the best. He was 48-68 in the SEC, and if you can't win in the SEC, then how good of an SEC coach are you, really? He also was just 14-36 against ranked opponents, and he was 1-18 against top 10 opponents at Kentucky. So Kentucky was always just a bridesmaid to the better SEC teams. There's also the issue of iffy quarterback play. Former 5-star from Georgia, Brock Vandagriff, was kind of ruined under his watch. Had just 1,593 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 80 receptions before being benched versus the Texas game for Gavin Wimsatt the rest of the year. It was very questionable, and at the end of the day, it caused Brock Vandagriff to retire. I don't think that was the biggest reason, but I think if Brock Vandagriff panned out at Kentucky, he would still be playing. But talented redshirt freshman Carter Boley had to wait until week 3 to start. At that point, Kentucky looked like one of the worst teams in the league. But Carter Boley led them to a bit of relevance. They almost made a bowl game, but Mark Stoops choked away a couple of games, especially the game against Texas, and as a result, he was out the door. Now Kentucky has hired Will Stein as the Oregon Ducks offensive coordinator. So for those guys keeping track, Oregon has lost both their DC and their OC on the year. And Stein definitely could have started off a little better. Getting Kenny Minchey from the transfer portal was pretty good, but overall, his class ranks just 40th, the 61st best recruiting class, although he has the 7th best transfer portal class. So good on Will Stein, but I don't know if Kentucky's going to really be relevant for a little while. It's going to be a couple down years until they get back up, and we'll see how Will Stein implements his offense around Kenny Minchey. Finally, we have Brian Kelly, and this one surprised me so much. Looking at his resume, he doesn't have a single losing season. He made it to the 2022 SEC Championship in his first season, went 10-4. Just a couple of upset losses at the beginning of the year, but LSU was always a team that played better down the stretch than they did at the beginning. And as you can see, he went 3-0 in bowl games. He went 34-14, including 19-10 in the SEC. So again, just shows you how tough these SEC jobs are. LSU is a tough place to really satisfy because they want to be national champions just like in 2019. His previous experience was very vast and widespread. Was a Cincinnati head coach from 2006-2009. Led the team to a 34-6 record. Won the Big East Coach of the Year in 2007-2009. 3 years in a row, by the way. And in Notre Dame, he made it to the 2012 BCS National Championship and won 113-40 with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The biggest issue with him is that he just wasn't able to win the biggest game of the year, and he couldn't lead the team to anything outside of the 2012 National Championship. But his NFL talent just speaks for itself. Everything that's underlined are all the All-Americans that he's coached, but just look at this. There's going to be some Hall of Famers from this list, but Brian Kelly has such a good eye for talent. These are people that he's either recruited or that he's coached. Look at all the people from Notre Dame. Brian Kelly did leave Notre Dame for LSU, and Notre Dame isn't exactly missing him. Look at his coaching tree even. Notre Dame offensive coordinator Chuck Martin became the head coach in Miami of Ohio. Mike Elko at Notre Dame is DC in 2017, became the head coach at Texas A&M. And Clark Lee, the Notre Dame defensive coordinator, just led Vanderbilt to their best stretch in history. Recruiting-wise, Brian Kelly was a very good recruiter, always ranking above the top 20 and even having 3 straight top 10 finishes and having the #1 ranked transfer portal in the entire nation. The biggest reasons why he was fired at LSU was that he was just a poor fit from the beginning. Kelly clashed with his AD Scott Woodward over firing Joe Sloan. He tried to think a southern accent during his introductory speech, which got a lot of LSU fans pretty mad at him. He fell to favor with the governor, Jeff Landry, and when the governor's against you, that's probably being done in capital letters. His CEO style just did not work in the SEC. He needed to be a little more hands-on and not just blame everything on his assistants. But overall, he just didn't have coordinator magic either. Defense under his watch was pretty terrible in the first 2 seasons at LSU, so he hired Blake Baker, and he became good. But then Joe Sloan was awful, and the offense cratered. It also was tough seeing Mike Denbrock leave for Notre Dame, which was his former offensive coordinator at Notre Dame for years, and he brought it to LSU too. So Mike Denbrock, now the coordinator at Notre Dame, their offense is doing all right. But overall, the portal of the class was a big letdown. He lost out on Bryce Underwood, which one of the biggest what-ifs in the entire league. Would Brian Kelly still be higher if Bryce Underwood was his starting quarterback? But overall, Nick Anderson was a big bust, Varian Brown was a big bust, and LSU's transfer portal class outside of A.J. Halsey and Mansour Lane were big letdowns. And of course, the new head coach is Lane Kiffin, who was the Ole Miss Rebels head coach. And it's just so funny seeing how Lane is doing at LSU, but also seeing how good Ole Miss is without Lane Kiffin. They made it all the way to the College Football Playoff semifinal. But Lane Kiffin is doing just fine at LSU. He's got the #1 ranked transfer portal class, and he's got a pretty good recruiting class to work with too. Plus, he's got Sam Levitt as well. So I think that LSU is a sneaky candidate to win the SEC next year with Lane Kiffin. So that's going to be it for our Black Monday special. Again, thank you guys so much for sticking around. I hope some of you were able to watch my old videos, but if not, please do. Please like and subscribe to this channel. I also run a podcast with my brother called The Grits Blitz every single week, where we talk about Falcons and Georgia football, along with other football for the most part. So please subscribe to that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.